Are you feeling hungry? Well, grab a snack and join me as I talk about one of the weirdest Shonen Jump manga the magazine has ever seen. Let's boot up this file. Full name, Hungry Marie or Harepeko no Marie, sometimes abbreviated as Peko Marie. Created by Ryuhei Tamura. Start date, February 27, 2017. End date, December 4th, 2017. Total chapters, 32, split into 4 volumes. Ryuhei Tamura is a pretty well-known mangaka in the Jump sphere and has a long history within the industry dating back to the early 2000s. The first thing of theirs to be seen in Shonen Jump magazine would be in Weekly Shonen Jump issue 45 of 2003, entitled Ura Beat. More one-shots would follow, with From Nirai Kanai appearing in Akamaru Jump Summer issue of 2004, and then Omiya Jet appearing in Jump once again, this time in issue 23 of 2005. Details on these works are hard to come by, but they are all bundled into Beelzebub Mao Gaiden. Sadly, only the Beelzebub related one-shots from this compilation have much coverage or translations. He would then do some assistant work under Toshiaki Iwashiro on Siren, and then in the 2008 Golden Future Cup, a usually annual rookie mangaka competition Jump holds, Beelzebub would debut in one-shot form, being the highlight of this competition, which netted him a serialization just a few months later in issue 13 of 2009. Beelzebub would be a smash hit, not only being well liked as a one-shot but a series too, getting numerous lead color pages within its first few months. Tamura's zany style of comedy and charming characters connected with people, perhaps its delinquent elements and the lighter supernatural shenanigans of Baby Beels helped too, leading it to have a fruitful 28-volume run till it would end in 2014 at 240 chapters. In the intervening years between his next series, more Beelzebub would appear with Beelzebub Bangai Hen, and to build up to his next big thing, the one-shot Tiger Dragon Brothers would be published in Shonen Jump issue 6-7 of 2015. This one-shot is actually the basis of 2 different series, one of them being Hungry Marie, and the other being Hardboiled Cop and Dolphin, a later Tamura series. It follows 2 brothers, Bado and Taiga, who climb a mountain in order to be taught a secret martial art by a sage. This ends up turning one into a dragon and one into a girl. It's silly, over the top, and doesn't really dwell on the gender bending aspect too much, though there's potentially a commentary on change and attaining an ideal form. But as mentioned, this is the basis for Hungry Marie, so how did Tamura refine and build on these ideas in a series he'd start less than 2 years later? Our story opens with an introduction to Taiga, similar to the one-shot version though his brother is absent. He lives in a Taoist temple situated right next to an overgrown Christian church, with the series setting up him having a love interest in the church girl next door, Anna. Already we have this wacky rom-com premise built upon 2 characters who practice or are surrounded by different faiths. Their guardians also hate each other, and it's made communication between Taiga and Anna quite stunted. Though after some weirdness, Anna selects Taiga to be a sacrifice for a ritual, which leads to him confessing his feelings. Though as he does so, lightning strikes and Taiga now finds himself in the body of Lady Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, the firstborn daughter of Marie Antoinette. To give some background on Marie-Thérèse beyond who she was the daughter of, a large portion of her childhood would have been surrounded by the French Revolution, beginning while she was merely 10 years old, with her finally leaving France at age 17. During that time, she was incarcerated for a fair portion of it, and pretty much saw her entire close family die or be executed. I am not an expert on history, never mind French history, but doing some light reading on her, everything surrounding her childhood is extremely tragic. Apparently, while incarcerated in Temple Tower, inscribed on her wall was this: Marie-Thérèse Charlotte is the most unhappy person in the world. She can obtain no news of her mother, nor be reunited to her, though she has asked it 1,000 times. Live, my good mother, whom I love well, but of whom I can hear no tidings. O my Father, watch over me from heaven above. O my God, forgive those who have made my parents suffer. Just keep this in mind as we discuss the character of Marie-Thérèse, and it might explain how baffled I am at her depiction within Hungry Marie. Japan often has this extreme fascination with historical figures, and French culture as well. This is a subject that an entire video could be devoted on, though it extends to Marie Antoinette as well. Marie-Thérèse then is a fork of this fascination, though I still find it quite the bizarre choice, as she's a person surrounded by some very heavy baggage. Not my first choice for a central figure to form a comedy series around, never mind a ghost gender-bending one. Perhaps at the time this was just a subject Tamura had become interested in, seen a documentary perhaps, and felt this is a figure from history who should be remembered, or it's just a very silly choice for silly's sake. Before anybody comments on historical accuracies, I need to note that this manga falls under alternate history, with Marie-Thérèse leaving France and captivity secretly to visit Japan, potentially using the Dark Countess mystery, a theory that the real Marie-Thérèse was swapped for a doppelganger as a jumping off point. This theory was completely debunked, by the way. All the talk about Marie-Thérèse within the manga initially is made fun of through Taiga, and to get critical early on, we get to see Anna and her family talk about how they're connected to Marie and want to resurrect her, only for the joke to be, "Wow, you're so crazy," or "Isn't this so crazy?" It's a joke you'll see over and over throughout the series, a bit of a reoccurring gag done by Tamura, and will comment on the series' wackiness, craziness, or penchant for being over the top throughout this video. So for a setup, Taiga Bijogi now finds himself in the body of Marie-Thérèse. He now inhabits someone from a different time period, as well as completely different class and race. This is a lot to handle, but of course, we have to have the customary boob squeeze because this is the basis of most hormonal gender swap manga. Sadly, there's not actually much else to dig into here, as none of these elements are really leveraged by the manga in order to say something. It barely even uses them for comedy, aside from a few low-hanging jokes like the aforementioned boob squeeze. The main reason for this gender swap is ultimately to complicate Taiga's love life and show off a French-styled girl fighting thugs, which is exactly what happens as some delinquents infiltrate the church. It's not even particularly well set up, they're just there to get beat on. Things get even more complicated though, as it's not just Taiga inhabiting the body of Marie-Thérèse, but also Marie inhabiting the body of Taiga, and they switch whenever Marie is hungry. Oh, there's the title. A title that doesn't really make any sense to me, because from what I've read, Marie had next to nothing to do with food, and if she was ever hungry, it was likely due to her being imprisoned, which is incredibly dark. I won't deny the final panel of chapter 2, where Marie states, "I find myself rather hungry," did make me chuckle. It just makes me think of this silly horse meme. There's a bluntness to it, with how it's tied into the manga's namesake that feels like a modern meme. Of course, the titular Hungry Marie from Hungry Marie would exclaim that they're hungry. This food aspect could be interesting. We do see Marie eat here and there, and it gives us some nice panels. I also just love seeing people eat in fiction. I'm a big fan of Meshinuma and Delicious in Dungeon, but here the series doesn't give it much focus. It's just an extra gimmick piled onto the insane plate of things the series is already trying to build on. The core idea at this point is Taiga trying to navigate the new changes in his life, while Marie sometimes comes out and causes shenanigans by being hungry, with both eventually wanting to go back to their original bodies. Also, if you take Marie's food, this happens. She can apparently open the gates to the underworld, an occurrence that happens like once total throughout the series, and then once again at the very end. For even more randomness, the concept surrounding the body swap is just toyed around with, and isn't the most consistent, as when Taiga goes to pee inside Marie's body, he just straight up becomes a ghost, because he tried to pee standing up and Marie didn't like that. This then leads to Marie taking over fully, so our setup here isn't a simple switcheroo, and instead of Tamura building on his initial idea, including the differences the characters might have to deal with or feel from so much changing, he just invents even crazier stuff to deal with. Like a new Siscon delinquent character being added named Nahori, who falls in love with Marie, the closest we really get to any gender-based shenanigans, though mostly he's used for just throwaway jokes, and the Siscon aspect isn't even that pronounced. He also appears in the new school Marie/Taiga attend, St. Antoine's, an all-girls school that is also suddenly letting any male students attend, so a bunch of delinquents appear. This is all due to a very ill-defined secret organization being involved, who plan to use Marie to transform the world because democracy has become a shell of its former self, citing corruption, pollution, terrorism, and a rise of economic inequality as core facets of the world that have changed since the French Revolution. The implication here, I think, being that they intend to restore the French royal family through Marie. I'm not going to entertain this train of logic too much, but was it not the people who overthrew them in the first place, in large part because of economic inequality, to the extent many could not feed themselves properly? Thus, we get the extremely famous quote attributed to Marie Antoinette, "Qu'ils mangent de la brioche," or "let them eat cake." While this isn't a substantive quote, the fact remains that this plotline is especially silly. Beyond just making a goofy set of antagonists to bind what little semblance of story the series has together, it feels so ill-considered and barely researched. Only the most basic of concepts have been taken from this period of history and its people to construct this manga, and while yes, it's predominantly a gag series, it does try to entertain a dramatic angle. It attempts to showcase Marie-Thérèse and draws influence from a particular point in history. But even as someone who knows very little of the period, it feels severely misrepresented. Another way it tries to tackle Marie-Thérèse is through the idea of what being a queen means. There have, to my knowledge, been attempts to list her as a queen, as supposedly she technically ruled for a very short period of time, though this is usually a fact that's denied. Also, there were periods in her life where she returned to France, potentially wanting to return to her mother's legacy. Hungry Marie approaches this very loosely and clumsily though, imprinting this queenly persona on Marie-Thérèse, where from historical accounts she seemed quite the polite and reserved figure. That's something I can forgive to make the story more interesting, though the IRL Otome game featuring Lady Lilith is something I'm far less forgiving of. We've established Marie has joined this new school, and quickly she brushes up against its queen, a short girl who orders around those beneath her like peons. Quickly, she ascertains Marie is a threat to her rule over the school and challenges her to a bizarre game. Here both queens control a portion of the school's populace, although Lilith by far has the majority and has won over many of the new delinquent students too. All of this is super random, an excuse to have some delinquents fight under the guise of this grander game with ill-defined rules. I admire that Tamura attempted to tackle the idea of what queenship might mean to Marie-Thérèse, but what resulted was a slog of an arc that made little sense. This is built upon by showing more backstory. I think there's also interlinking ideas here of how one treats their subjects, as well as personal possessions, with the series remarking about treating both well. It's a pretty tenuous connection though. Ideas are thrown around a bit here. Taiga's ancestor knew Marie apparently, so we have a fated lovers kind of thing going on here, with him tying into the Dark Countess mystery backstory. For some rare praise, I love this intro page to chapter 15, it's spectacular. The whole page black save for the silhouette of the bars being integrated into the image of Marie being imprisoned. It's elements like this which I wish the series built on more to show how Marie might feel. You could even link that in with Marie being so hungry, though the series never does this. This whole arc is a big cart before the horse moment, as Marie's core character is being built up not for the sake of other elements of the story exploring her, but for the character to serve these weird little games Tamura has concocted. The queen elements only really appear once this Otome game has been established, when I feel this game should serve her development and this exploration of this theme. The final game in question is also a version of Cops and Robbers titled Queens vs Revolutionaries, and this is emblematic of how the series operates. It only uses the veneer of Marie-Thérèse and the French Revolution and seldom digs deeper than the basic facts or visual representations. It's not really worth digging into anyway, since it just devolves into fights, with one of the core jokes being, "We've left our readers behind," which is occurring simultaneously with a joke about molestation. Taiga goes on a tirade about not accepting any derailments from his love story, but that's what the entire series is, with Hungry Marie thinking it's really funny to point out how derailed and random the series is over and over. These jokes aren't funny in the slightest to me and reek of Tamura trying to cover up how loose and aimless his story is. This then continues until the end, with Lilith falling in love with Taiga, adding a new character with a new unfunny gimmick to the story. Then Taiga gets his body back, but actually he switches between himself with a plush dog head but with a human body, or a human head with a dog plush body. Admittedly, this single panel of Taiga is quite funny, but by far, the manga is way more misses than hits. There's some cuteness up next, with Taiga and Marie having to inhabit both bodies so Taiga can go on a date, but at this point, what series are we even reading anymore? Which is something I'll double down on, as a tiny witch then appears, Rose, the witch of Marie's incense burner, present at the convenient Marie Antoinette exhibit in town. This does tie into the idea of looking after your possessions, I guess, but it's so random and leads to both characters finally getting back to their original bodies, throwing out the initial premise but also signaling the beginning of the end. We then get a chapter about a ghost girl who committed suicide, which is tied into social media likes for some reason. Then a chapter about a side character getting catfished, and both of these are so random, just like the core conceit of the series, but also they don't really sit right with me and feel tonally weird. The suicide stuff is more obvious, I don't think it's treated at all respectfully or in an interesting way, but how the catfishing is handled is equally odd. There's no real build up to it, and I guess the series feels it can get away with it because of the random style of humor. As the series wraps up, Taiga and Marie think about each other more romantically. Last minute, they realize they actually do like each other, and the series brings up that this whole predicament was caused by Marie loving Taiga's ancestor so much, she wished she'd be brought back to life later on so she could love him forever because Taiga is their reincarnation, so now they have to fall in love so she can finally be set free? We needed some kind of grand reveal and stakes before the end, I suppose, which is then supplemented by a few enemies appearing who take Marie away. It's then revealed that the mastermind behind all of this is Marie Antoinette herself, who is still alive or has been resurrected, being backed by the Knights Templar who have pills to stabilize her form in the material world. I have no idea how that works. Do you feed the pills to the skeleton of Marie Antoinette, or has she been alive this entire time? Being a bit nitpicky here, but it's kind of weird. She also wants to open the gates to hell, presumably to take revenge for the revolution from years ago. Taiga and friends then fight a bunch of skeletons. Marie Antoinette steals her own daughter's body, and with it she lures Taiga in, delivering him a sneaky stab, killing him, but Marie-Thérèse then manages to revive him, taking back control of her own body, but it's now the revival is at the cost of her form, and she dies, kind of giving us a bittersweet end, but not really, because Marie still exists, but she's now very small, and also she's still hungry. I feel like I'm slipping into some kind of psychosis, trying to piece all of this together and talk about it, but this is indeed the end of Hungry Marie. For this video, I opted to cover a lot of my criticisms throughout the story and analysis section, but I'll reiterate my core issues and some praise here for more clarity. To start, I admire how insane Hungry Marie is, particularly the initial concept. It's rife for character exploration and jokes, intertwining actual real-world history and culture into a comedy series, which is something I think can work. For other examples, see Jump's own David of the Renaissance, a story about famous art pieces being characters in a school setting. Or for a comedy series that includes two characters originating from different faiths, there's even Saint Young Men. This is sadly where my praise transitions into criticism, as Hungry Marie takes no advantage of the concepts it establishes, with one of my core complaints being it doesn't dig enough into the real Marie-Thérèse or France during this period enough, and doesn't leverage it for any jokes. Instead, those jokes are often extremely random. The hungry aspect of Marie, for example, is used for a few jokes here and there, but it's never really tied back into her character, despite it being the series' namesake. Ideas are thrown around with reckless abandon, and I'm not going to repeat any of them. My attempt to summarize the end clues you in to how exhaustingly all over the place this series is almost all the time. I don't have too many complaints about it artistically. It doesn't wow me, nor does it look bad. Tamura is great at drawing some of the flashy impact scenes, and the odd page turn comedy bit does get me. His character design is a little lacking though, particularly all of his delinquent characters are very bland. Maybe this is due to them also having little to no personality too. For what I've read from his other series as well, he definitely has some same face syndrome going on too, with many of his cast looking a little too similar. If anything though, the art is not why the series was cancelled, and it's more of the aforementioned elements. I'm gonna make some generalizations here, but I think Japan culturally likes France. They've taken so much influence from the country and various places, from different foods being popular to Lolita fashion specifically being a staple of many anime and manga, which has its roots in various places, though one of those styles is Rococo or late Baroque, which just so happens to surround Marie Antoinette, a figure you'll also see mentioned or will crop up in various Japanese media. They love her to bits. I don't think this appeal is deeper than surface appearances though, so the average Shonen Jump reader probably wouldn't care about this period of history unless it was explained in a clearer and more compelling way, which here it is not. Coming off of Beelzebub 2, there must have been some expectations at play here. With their recent comedy hit ending, what will Tamura's next big thing be? And while Hungry Marie is different on the surface, in the end, this is just another delinquent comedy manga accompanied by a supernatural individual. My knowledge of Beelzebub isn't great, but I think Baby Demon Lord that someone has to look after is a much simpler to understand premise and something you can build jokes around much easier versus the reborn ghost of Marie-Thérèse who is gender swapped with the main character. Not that this setup even lasted for long anyway. And that in itself is also either a sign of one of two things, I feel. One, either Tamura was struggling externally to capture reader interest, so he kept changing the formula to see what might stick, or two, Tamura picked a concept he just couldn't work with easily, so he had to keep changing story elements to keep making jokes. Or I guess there's three, he's insane and planned all of this out from the very beginning, which I sincerely doubt. What has become quite common for me in recent memory is me bringing up a specific batch of manga that debuted in Shonen Jump. 2017's batch of 6, an unprecedented push for new series which Hungry Marie was a part of. This gave us U19 and Poro's Demon Diaries, both works from two newbies which were quickly axed. I have a video on the former and a video on Poro will be coming out soon too. Then we have Dr. Stone and We Never Learn, the two hits from this batch which you'll likely be familiar with. Finally, we have two manga by veteran authors, Robot X Laserbeam and Hungry Marie. These two didn't get instantly cancelled, but didn't go on for long runs either. In Hungry Marie's case, 32 chapters is not bad at all. It lasted over a year, but why it lasted is what I want to tap into. Having some hopes for Tamura, Jump likely kept this around so he could find his groove, but that never happened, with other manga within this batch proving to be much more popular. It would be cancelled towards the end of the year, with Jump having some wiggle room I feel. A few series that were meandering around, though I'd feel it hard to justify them being cancelled over Hungry Marie. Gag manga were plentiful at this time with the likes of Psyche K, Spring Weapon No. 1, Isobi Isobi Monogatari, which would be around for Hungry Marie's run but would end around the same time, with Jump then throwing Tomato no Lycopene in as it ended. I feel We Never Learn also executed its school rom-com vibes much better than Marie, with them both being in the same batch. There was just too much overlap between things within Jump already, plus Marie was floundering almost the entire time it was in the magazine. Veterans cannot coast on their past successes forever and need to innovate and grow alongside Jump in order to flourish. Those are just my thoughts on Hungry Marie, the ideas it was tackling, and why I might think it was cancelled, but what do others think? I've gone and asked the lovely folks on the Exiles Office's Discord what they think to perhaps give us more perspective. People's comments this time were quite critical, with many finding holes within the series, though there was also some fun to be had throughout too. Lumi comes in swinging, stating that Hungry Marie has one fatal flaw: it never lets you feel normal. They extrapolate on this by clarifying that the weirdness the series exhibits isn't an issue by itself, but the fact that you are never given time to acclimate to any given thing before the next bizarre scenario surfaces is its core failing. Cosmos is then brought up as an example of a series by Tamura with an over-the-top premise of aliens in disguise fighting the main cast over insurance payments. It's weird, but the series takes its time to build out its world, characters, and normalize these things within the context of the series, something Hungry Marie doesn't do, leading to you not expecting anything specific from it. It's an endless barrage of disparate ideas. Shirt Frumpus likened the series to being stuck between a gag manga and a more traditional battle series, though it was afraid to commit to either. For every neat thing it exhibited, there was another awkward moment holding it back. All in all, an interestingly bad manga, a judgment I actually quite like the sound of and agree with. Red Ranger Wyan also found it didn't capitalize on any of its ideas, which were initially creative and unique to them, but devolved as the series was inundated by Tamura's randomness. They also had some qualms with the art, finding its quality drifted between being charming at times to sloppy at others, with many characters being derivatives from Beelzebub. Joshua comments on Tamura's habits, noting similar ideas that appear throughout his stories. Alongside this, there's also a mention of how Tamura has a tendency to stall his stories, cramming most of his chapters with nonsense humor, with a lot of fourth wall breaks which Joshua found cheap and lazy. Jokes like this should be used more thoughtfully for more impact, but in Hungry Marie, they're a dime a dozen. There were a few pervading takes that appeared in a few different reviews, like the noting of the series' poor translation as it went on. Numerous people like Lumi and Cerulean brought this up. This isn't a mark on the series itself, but it's important to note for those reading in English. Along with Your Name being brought up as a series that may have inspired Tamura to do the body swapping, as it was especially popular at the time of serialization, Jin 1 and a few others also brought up Ranma Half as a comparison point, stating that it was more akin to Ranma Half at home. I haven't fully read Ranma Half, I've only dabbled in it a little bit, but with how underutilized the body swapping was in Hungry Marie, I think this is the Ranma Half stuck at the bottom of a long lost shoe. It's probably not even worth comparing the two. Nenek then also brought up liking it, but wishing it explored more, especially with the initial body swap, where it could have commented on gender and relationships in a broader sense. Cerulean found the series couldn't really decide what genre it was, since it tried to balance so many different elements, ultimately leading to it being a mess, where plot points were dropped throughout the story unceremoniously up until the end, where it tries to cram everything together. Cerulean also notes that the body swapping was underexplored, with there being next to no moments of Marie and Taiga experiencing the differences their bodies would bring, which they found pretty disappointing. Initially, when setting up this video, I mentioned there might be potential for some queer analysis, since I remember the series having some body swapping antics, though in retrospect there really isn't much, if any, room for exploration of the sort. Jesus Flash found the series bizarre in an inept way, throwing tons of ideas out that could be interesting or funny, but it never commits to any of them. Disappointment was sparked as they enjoyed the initial premise, and then were subjected to the whims of Tamura's randomness, which stripped the series of any direction by diluting what it did have, going for it with literally everything else. Uninteresting and pointless are words that come up here, and I agree with their place, because when you're bombarded with so many things so quickly, you just become numb to everything else. A suggestion I really like from Jesus Flash is how it could have salvaged its direction while retaining the aspect of randomness by investing into being more of a parody. It already tackled various tropes in comedic ways at the beginning. We have casual rom-com stuff, gender bending, body swapping, and the series likes to be meta, though sadly, instead it just went off the rails, with the final sentiment here being it was wasted potential. Yustin wanted to like the series, but often found it mishandled too many of its elements, like the romances feeling underdeveloped and rushed, with the open ending not being satisfying in that regard either. They also point out that Tamura tends to introduce many characters only to pretty much discard them a few chapters later once their use has been fulfilled. I think this criticism is interlocked with a lot of the general critique surrounding the series' lack of direction, with it bouncing between comedy, romance, and battle. There's just not enough room for everything, never mind all these extra characters who get next to no page time. Moving on to some of the more positive but still critical reviews, J-Vaso comes in with Hungry Marie as their first Tamura manga, liking some aspects but finding how it handled its battle elements is the thing that made the series fall flat for them, with these battles taking away from the other unique aspects the series had going for it. Despite this, they still enjoyed overall, and it made them interested in checking out Beelzebub, so that's a positive if anything. Yuzakura Psycho feels as though Tamura is still stuck in the 2000s, stating that it wasn't as funny as Beelzebub or his other series. Similarly, Melons also feels that the series is straight out of the 2000s for better or worse, finding it hard to believe that this was serialized in 2017. They mention the humor and character archetypes feeling dated, and bring up Tamura not adapting since Beelzebub. Still, they enjoyed the series partially because of those reasons, citing its uniqueness, endearing characters, and meta humor as positives. Percy found the series was at its best during its middle portion, where Taiga and Marie were undergoing their body swapping shenanigans, with the jokes here being the funniest and the core cast like Mamoru and Leo appealing to them. What doesn't work for them is how the story sets out and ends on a more serious note surrounding Marie's resurrection, but this is never handled well, leading to the series dropping its side cast by the end. Percy also brings up the hungry portion of Hungry Marie not being very present or mattering at all. While the review here was mostly critical like many others, Percy still found the series quite charming and couldn't bring themselves to dislike it. Manga Crash comes in too to give their thoughts as a big fan of Tamura and Beelzebub. And while it didn't match the highs of Beelzebub, Tamura's charm and style of comedy is still there, making it an enjoyable read for them. Crash found that through reading, they still found themselves rediscovering why they liked Ryuhei Tamura's works in the first place, showing there's still some source here. Kinky found the series very fun overall, citing its cast full of unique designs and personalities, as well as its initial focus on Marie and European culture. Tamura's humor appealed to them too, with the only major criticism being its ending is especially rushed, backloading most of its plot due to spending a bit too much time meandering around beforehand on smaller side stories. Having read what everyone feels, the issues exhibited by the series are clearer than ever. Most people found it didn't handle its genre splicing and bombardment of ideas well, though for some, Tamura's style of comedy and individuality did shine through, lending it to become an interestingly bad series at worst and a fun mess at times for others. Just over a year after Hungry Marie would end, Tamura would return in issue 6-7 of 2019 with the ninja piano-focused one-shot Rapper Renten, seeing a ninja suddenly become enamored with the piano. Also was a gag series per Tamura's style, and from what I've read, it included references to songs from popular Jump series. Next, Tamura would serialize a third series within the magazine, debuting in Shonen Jump issue 30 of 2020, Hardboiled Cop and Dolphin, lasting a longer 47 chapters and 5 volumes before being cancelled. This is a series I have made a video on long ago, though in retrospect I have a bit more respect for it. It does have a similar hook of a delinquent-esque character caring for a supernatural figure, though eschews the usual school setting in favour of an island filled with local police and fish people. Battle elements are more ubiquitous here, and it feels a lot more solid than Marie. This then brings us to present day, where Tamura has two active series, one being Sebeku-chan wa Kamitsu Kitai, serialized within Study Jump, an educational magazine aimed at children, with his series delving into Egyptian history and archaeology. Even constrained to educational manga, Tamura cannot hold back on drawing some extremely attractive characters, with the art on display overall being very impressive. We then saw Tamura hop to a different publisher, as in 2023, monthly Sunday Gene X issue 5 would see Cosmos debut, a series focused on aliens and insurance. This, from what I've read, has all the gags and some battle elements and the general style you'll be familiar with if you've read any of Tamura's works, though is slightly more mature, with this being serialized within a seinen magazine. Cosmos over the last few years has also become a bit of a flagship title for Sunday Gene X, appearing on many of its recent covers. Tamura seems to be doing well now after switching things up a bit and experimenting, which I'm really happy to see. Hungry Marie illustrated the troubles of trying to find success after their initial series, ideas being thrown around here and there, with only the experience of Beelzebub to fall back on, perhaps being a bit overconfident with their style of comedy and their pre-established fanbase. Hardboiled Cop and Dolphin demonstrated that Tamura had learned somewhat, though it struggled to find its footing in the hyper-competitive Jump, so we saw Tamura move onward, which I think was ultimately the right choice. Hungry Marie in the end was just not it, but proved to be a useful learning experience I think for Tamura, and while I think it's a complete mess, it's kind of interesting to watch this train derail and explode over and over again. It featured ideas you just don't see in other manga within the magazine, and I'm appreciative of the unique experience that Hungry Marie is. And that brings this X-File on Hungry Marie to a close. Have you read it before, or Tamura's other works? What do you think about it? You can leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, as mentioned throughout the video, I have numerous other X-Files on other cancelled Shonen Jump manga which you might enjoy. Alongside these, there's also my History of Shonen Jump series, where I go through all of Shonen Jump's manga year by year, with me currently reaching the end of the 90s, where popular series like One Piece, Hunter x Hunter, and Naruto have made their debut. So if you want to learn what other manga debuted around those, and the general shape of the magazine at the time, I'd highly recommend those videos too. A huge thanks also goes out to all of my patrons, who without I wouldn't be able to make videos as frequently or as detailed as I do. They're also responsible for picking what series I cover through the Patreon exclusive polls, where you can suggest what manga you'd like to see a video on. There's also a bunch of bonus videos on the Patreon too, which I make as thanks for everyone's support. And if you pledge at the $3 tier or higher, alongside being thanks at the end of all my videos, you'll also receive a unique little doodle to represent you in the credits, like the following hungry people. Thank you, Trinity, Jade, Kazukugaru, Circle Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lace Slogget, Crispy Bacon, Cho Henshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Yuzakura Psycho, Wurzel, Violent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, Crash, 41IZ, Hong, Jamie Reynolds, Manu, Poke Emblem, James Miller, Jopa Monkey, Just a Virus, Star Sphinx, PK Broly, Fenrir Black, Elijah Espinoza, Neo Humanoid, Mark Nielsen, Electro Pirate, Jay Vasso, Three Frogs in a Trenchcoat, Sir Flash, Gay Shark, Slimy Okra, Giddista, Wavy Sky, TG Talks Manga, John Jerry 722, Andrew, Xenomat, Missile, Tara Elizabeth, Stratomega 13, Dennis Tambik, Jubei, Lise, Frog Dude. Back on Earth, Yustin Maikage, Papa Aeon, Gwenta, Mamina, Nozarashi, VHS Enthusiast, Kaito 4, Hilltop, Bako Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, John Sanford, Color, Jaime, Strawberry Proshone, Vaz, Palette, Ruina, Juice, Kurumi Nox, Eric Goski, Mr. Shira, Grizz Exploder, Dextora, Eni Oshowo, Cheese, Emmy, Benjamin, Tenmaku Lover, Taifumi Studios, Ignate, Iliades, Gyrus, VHS Enthusiast, Kanojo, King Snacks, Sidrune, Daniel, Melons, Ichizulu, Modest Matt, and Archgoat PL. Thank you all so much for being patrons, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.